shall I go back to presentation?
Yes, please upload your presentation.
Ma'am, please mute everybody's mic. Right. So
Yeah, please resume.
so I welcome you back to the presentation. And meanwhile, Dr. Ranjan Bera sir, since he's not able to connect to us, looks like there's a connectivity issue at various ends today. Another drawback of the online system, we can say that sometimes it can be very useful, but then we really have to depend upon the system. So let's go ahead with the presentation only. I will continue and let us see when he can join us. So the drivers for smart grid, we will talk about these drivers from two perspectives, from the utility perspective as well as from the consumer perspective. So from the utility perspective, you see there is a substantial reduction in transmission and distribution losses. We have huge transmission and distribution losses. And as you all know, that a unit saved is a unit earned. So if we can reduce our transmission and distribution losses, we can make our system much more efficient, and accordingly we can afford to come down on the tariffs as well. Purchase cost, better asset management, and increased grid visibility. This has become possible due to wide area measurement technology. You see, this concept of phasers dates back in 1893 when Charles Steinmetz had first introduced it. However, it was Arun Phadke, he's the IIT Kharagpur pass out, who implemented the concept of using the real-time PMUs, where the time stamping is done using a GPS satellite, and that is how this wide area measurement technology that came into picture. So this provides the increased grid visibility. You can have the time stamped signals, and accordingly, if you compare this with SCADA, we have been comparing this. If you compare this with SCADA, SCADA can provide you about one sample of each 2 to 4 seconds. But if you talk about the wide area measurement technologies or the synchrophasers, they can provide you about 20 to 30 samples per second. Okay. So you see the amount of difference which is being creeping in, and because of this,
now is it
the
coming?
Conditions can be better captured.
Now it is coming. Hello? It is not coming. Just a minute.
The dynamic conditions can be better captured. So once you have the dynamic conditions which can be captured in a better manner, the grid can afford to be self-healing, and we can impart certain features so that the grid can take care of itself without any human intervention. So that is the perfect meaning of automation actually. And renewable energy integration, as we had already discussed this. Now the drivers for smart grid from the consumer's perspective also we
Now I can see you.
So power
Yeah,
for
Priyanka.
Yes, ma'am.
Priyanka, sorry. Now Ranjan Bera sir is connected.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Yes, sir. Can you able to hear in the Cisco WebEx, sir? You are not able to hear us? Okay. We are Priyanka, we are also not able to hear him.
No, ma'am, we are not able to hear him.
Sir? Yeah, please log out and log in again. Yeah. So today, Priyanka, sorry, there is a problem.
It's all right, ma'am. In fact,
yeah, some issues. Sorry for the disturbance. We are
that's completely fine, ma'am. In fact, our participants have been bearing a lot with us because we have been interrupting them
yes,
every now and then.
Yeah, because Ranjan Bera sir is not able to hear us, and we are not able to hear him also. So he is logged off and log in again. Let us see what will happen. Meanwhile, have you your presentation? Have you withdrawn?
it is not shared, I have withdrawn it so that we could see Ranjan Mehra sir.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, let's wait for it. Yeah, sir. Will he came again? Yeah. But he's not available. He must be trying again to come log in. Yeah, someone is asking. Meanwhile, we can see the chat and just reply to the chat. Mr. C. Kamesh Rao is asking, please elaborate on the uses of IoT in renewable energy integration with the grid. Actually, Ranjan Mehra sir is going to take this issue for microgrid purpose. So, one second, please. So sorry for the disturbance, participants. Sorry, very sorry. And I think Priyanka will continue this session, and I will request Dr. Ranjan Mehra to come after lunch because he has a lot to speak, and I know he needs a lot of time because we had our experience. So I request Priyanka to continue her session, and I will request Ranjan Mehra sir to come after lunch. So Priyanka, please continue.
Ma'am, can you please mute everybody's mic?
Yes, I'll do that.
Okay. Sorry, participants, we have been disturbing you a lot, but now I will continue with this presentation till end. And we have decided that because Ranjan Mehra sir will also need certain time, and it may not be possible for us to interrupt him in between. He will continue after lunch only. So I'll just continue with this part so that you have the continuity is being maintained. So as for from the consumer's perspective, the power for all is one of the biggest motive for the smart grid. So if we have a more efficient system, probably we are able to reach out to more number of people, and the consumers can have better access to power. Improve reliability, no power cuts, no more DG sets and inverters. This sounds really appealing. Improve quality of supply, no more voltage stabilizers. You see all our sophisticated electronic equipments, whether you talk about the computers, you talk about the television sets, the refrigerators, everything comes. Sarika ji, please mute your mic. Sarika ji, can I please request you to mute your mic? So they all come with voltage stabilizers. So imagine a condition where we have a quality of supply where the voltage stabilizers are no more required. So that will reduce the equipment cost as such. User friendly and transparent interface with utilities. So this can become extremely transparent whether where we have this option that the Mukesh Sharma ji is asking about what about the variable load? Yes, the variable load, because if the load varies, again, you have this smart grid infrastructure and it can take care of the variable load very well. Increase choices for consumers, including green power. Now, I can assert upon this a bit. You see, if the consumers are being given choice, whether you want to purchase, whether you want the power which is coming to your home, it is coming from conventional sources or it is coming from green, or it is a green power. You will realize that in course of time, they may prefer to go for green power. We may not be able to relate with it at this stage, but you recall back some times back, almost everybody was using these plastic cups for having tea and all. But now there are consumers who assert upon this that we don't want to use plastic. Instead, we would go for the biodegradable cups, even if they are costlier enough. So this has already been prevalent in Europe, that the consumers are willing to purchase the power which is green, which is not damaging to environment. And with this smart grid infrastructure, maybe we will be able to provide the choice to our consumers, whether you want the greener power to be coming to your home, or you want the power from the conventional sources. So many of them can actually opt for the green power. Prosumer enablement. So as we have already discussed, that if I install rooftop solar, then if I'm not consuming power at this point of time, I may want that I feed back this power back to the grid, so that the net metering can be taken care of, and accordingly some amount of reduction in my electricity bill can take place. So that kind of prosumer enablement is possible only through extensive IoT infrastructure. Unless we have everything visible to us, this might not be possible. So this prosumer enablement is another consumer perspective, which is the driver for smart grid. Option to save money by shifting loads from peak periods to off-peak periods. This we have already discussed at the time of use pricing. Now, what is a smart grid expected to do? Ensure the reliability to degrees never before possible. We are summarizing. Maintain its affordability. Now, I can assert upon this point. If we talk about affordability, sometimes back when I was going for my doctorate degree and I was working on my PhD, and I was working on the renewable energy integration, this solar, the per unit cost of solar was somewhere around 13 rupees per kilowatt hour. Wind was somewhere around 7 rupees per kilowatt hour. So it was difficult to match up with the conventional sources which were generating at around 3.5 rupees per kilowatt hour. But now it has become so much affordable in all these years. You see this Riva Ultra Mega Solar Power Project which has come up, which is a 750 megawatt project, and it is a joint venture of Madhya Pradesh Vidyut Vikas Nigam Limited and Solar Energy Corporation of India, that is SECI. Mahindra bidded for it, and Mahindra Sustain has bidded for it, and they are providing the energy, the solar power, at the rate of 2.96 rupees per kilowatt hour. It has become so affordable that it has come down below the cost which could be provided by the conventional generation. I recently heard that a recent solar generation which has come up at Bhadla in Rajasthan, they are providing at rupees 2.44 per kilowatt hour. So we can now no longer say that the power from renewable energy is not affordable. It has become much more affordable, and in the course of time, it will become much more affordable in the near future as well. So this has also become possible because we have a better infrastructure, and the affordability can now be achieved, reinforcing our global competitiveness. Sometimes it becomes essential because what the world and we also have to do, because we have to reinforce, we have to mark our global presence. You see, Germany has been one in the solar power integration. Japan is moving like anything with large scale storage devices, and it has been moving ahead, well ahead in the area of distribution. European Union has a smart grid agenda, and that is why we all have to reinforce ourselves. We all have to reinforce our global competitiveness, accommodating renewable and traditional energy sources. We have been asserting that if we wish to go at 175 gigawatts by 2022, and if we go with up to gigawatts by 2030, we should be able to accommodate the renewable and traditional energy resources both. Potentially reduce the carbon footprint. You will be surprised at this. The social cost of carbon is highest in India. It is $86 per carbon dioxide. So we really have to give it a thought, have to think the ways. So this carbon footprint can be advancements and efficiency is yet to be ended. We are through what the best can come up, and this smart grid can help us achieve the efficiencies which we haven't been able to see as of now. By and large, prepare for an electric system cleaner, more efficient, much more reliable, resilient, and responsive. That is a smarter grid. With this background now, compare what is the difference between the conventional one and a smarter version. So consumer participation. In consumer grid, it is not participative. I don't know what is happening with the grid. When we had the 2000, we had idea that what had actually happened. We just came on without power. But then what had actually happened, I was not informed. Smart grid, the consumer is informed, involved, They are active consumers. We have the demand response pro. We have the involvement distributed energy resources. So we have totally active consumer participation. Generation and storage. With conventional generation, it is mainly centralized. You have the large synchronous machines which are being installed at the center. Now the shift in paradigm with the smart grid, where we have the distributed energy resources sleeping in. Quality for the with conventional grid, the focus was on outage, slow response to power. We were not bothered about the quality earlier. We just wanted that somehow the power should come. That was the focus. But with now smarter grid, the quality has also become high. I not only want the quality, that is the voltage and frequency which should be minimized. The harmonic content should be lower so that I have minimum at my also system. The focus was on protecting us following. Now the focus is on self-heal, prevention, minimizing impact on consumers. So now consumer has become the focus of smart grid. Earlier, the focus. With grid was the focus. With smart grid now, consumer is the focus. Resilience. This is vulnerable. And smart grid has rapid abilities. We have already discussed the theme characteristic. Now, what are the challenges on IoT applications for grid? As we move ahead with the later lectures as well, you will find that experts will talk about on smart more and more. When you have Alec Harris sir joining in again, you will see that he'll talk about what can come when we have IoT with for smart grid applications. Security is a common threat to all IoT solutions. You see, we recently started using, I just give you an example that we started using Zoom very soon because of this erratic security threat. And all government departments were advised not to go on Zoom but to use other platforms. So this can be a common threat to all IoT-based solutions. So this has to be done very carefully. In fact, sometimes when I hear about all the driverless cars, and I know what will happen that if I instruct my car to go to some place, and if somebody is able to hack it, and instead of going to my designated option, then I am being somewhere else. So the security can be based on each and every field where IoT is finding solution. Connectivity, one can understand it better. Today we have been facing the connectivity issues at our speed end, and that is why they have not been able to connect it. So you see, your system needs to be always on with a minimum delay for data processing and feedback, unless until this is there, we cannot talk about the efficient control mechanism. So the connectivity is one typical challenge where we seek the help from the computer science people so that they can help us out in this. Integration challenges may arise when you need to connect your new IoT network to the existing legacy systems that often rely on outdated technologies. So you have this Edison's grid, and you want to connect it to Kevin Ashton's technology. So there's a generation gap which is there and which is very much there. And this integration challenges have to be addressed because we cannot, as we discussed, that this power system is largest interconnected machine. It is not possible to change each and every part immediately. This can be phased out only in the steps, and that is why these integration challenges may arise when we have this kind of issue. Now, Rome was not built in a day, and that is why it is not possible to come up with smart grid at once. Rather, what we do is that we go for the smaller or the miniature version of it. So I have the microgrid. Microgrid is the grid at the micro level, at a smaller level. I try to make this microgrid smart so that what I have is a smart microgrid. These smart microgrids can be connected. I can have a cluster of smart microgrids, and then these cluster of smart microgrids form what we call as a smart grid. So this smart microgrid can serve as a basic building block of the smart grid infrastructure. So let us now discuss the key features of smart microgrid and how these smart microgrids can be integrated in the smart grid framework. So this facilitates easier transition from traditional grid to smart grid, as we have seen that we will have them at the smaller level and then they can be connected to form a bigger infrastructure. This provides a solution for reliable integration of DERs. What are DERs? They are the distributed energy resources. So all small generators along with the energy storage systems, they are being referred to as the distributed energy resources, power electronic converters, controllable loads, and protection devices. Future of smart grid depends on the increase in the number of smart microgrids. So we have this top-down approach. If I want to summarize this entire slide, we have this top-down approach where you see I have the microgrids. I make this smart microgrids smart. Have a cluster of smart microgrids. This becomes a smart grid, and then smart grid is a component of the smart city framework, which we have been lately talking about. So what is a microgrid? Now let us first discuss now what is a microgrid. So microgrids are electricity distribution systems connecting loads and DERs that can be operated in a controlled and coordinated way, either while connected to the main power network or while islanded. We will discuss each and every point which has been put up in this definition in the later stages. So you see that microgrid, if I try to sum it up in the layman's language, this is a grid at the micro level. The size can range from few kilowatts to megawatts. So if I install a PV rooftop of, let us say, 2 kilowatts, that is also microgrid. And then I can also have a microgrid which can range up to the level of megawatts. The largest microgrid in the world is being installed by this Palau, which is a small island nation in the Western Pacific Ocean. They have installed a microgrid of the capacity of 100 megawatts, where this 35 megawatts is being coming from solar and 45 megawatt hour is being coming from the energy storage, and the rest is being provided by the diesel generator systems. Once it is being installed and once it is complete, it should be able to feed about 45% of the nation's demand through this microgrid. So this is the basic layout. You have MG1, MG2, MG3, MG4. They are the individual microgrids. They all are being connected via smart technologies so that they form a nest of microgrids. And then this nest of microgrids can be connected to the bulk power system via smart technologies. So this is how the entire smart grid infrastructure is being built up. So I think that this layout should give you a clear-cut ideas where the IoT finds its roles. The IoT finds its roles in the extensive information infrastructure which is present between all these microgrids and between these microgrids and the bulk power system. So the next slide, features of smart microgrid. I will go over this very quickly. The extensive use of sensing, communication, control technologies. So I'm again reaching out to all electronics and telecommunication people over there, that you have to provide this infrastructure for sensing, for developing communications, and also for control. Electricity being supplied by diverse range of DER. You just don't have the thermal power stations or the nuclear power stations, but you have a diverse range of generators which have been integrated in this framework. Intelligent load and energy resource management, integrated storage, load shifting, prioritization, all these form the self-healing and self-configuring. We have already been discussing this, the basic microgrid architecture. Now let us discuss this because now we have this basic layout and we can hold some amount of discussion. So you see that you can see a grid over here. So this is the grid, and this entire structure is the microgrid. This microgrid is being connected to the grid at the point of common coupling. This PCC is the point of common coupling. This is the microgrid structure. You see that there are various generators being integrated to it. So you have this solar photovoltaic panels which are being placed on the rooftop. You can see over here. You have these wind turbine generators which are being there. You have these diesel generators are also there. Then you have this energy storage options. Storage is also there. And then you have various loads which are being connected to the microgrid. You see that one very typical features of this microgrid is that be it the source or be it the load, they are all connected via the controllers. So you have these load controllers, the local controllers for the load, and then you have this micro generation control, which is being connected to the generators and the storage devices. These blue lines, they indicate the communication network. So you see that these dotted lines, they indicate, if you are able to see it clearly, these dotted lines, they indicate the communication infrastructure. So you see that all controllers can communicate amongst each other via this communication infrastructure. It is all there. And red lines, they indicate the electrical infrastructure. This entire network is being connected to grid through a point of common coupling via a microgrid central controller, MGCC. So this controller decides whether the grid should remain, the microgrid should remain connected to grid, or it should operate in the islanded mode. If it is connected to grid, what amount of power should flow from grid to microgrid or from microgrid to grid? All that controlling action is being taken by MGCC, that is microgrid controller. This point of common coupling decides this is where the microgrid is being connected to grid, and if you open this can operate in the islanded mode. So this is the basic microgrid infrastructure. So what are the enabling technologies for this microgrid? As you can see, over here, you have two-way communications between the controllers and the microgrids. So you need the two-way communication technologies with necessary hardware and software. You need the open architectures for plug and play of home appliances, even these electric vehicles which are coming in. Software to ensure and maintain the security of information and standards. This is very much required. The security has to be ascertained. Sensing, measurement, control, automation, all these technologies are required. So you need the intelligent electronic devices. You need phasor measurement units, wide area monitoring, protection control, integrated sensors, all the smart appliances and smart meters. All these form, they were the part of the smart grid infrastructure. They are the part of smart microgrid infrastructure as well. So they are to be there. Power electronics and energy storage is also required to be there. You need the efficient power electronic interfaces with lesser losses, more efficient interfaces. You also need these interfaces with better controlling facilities so that the controlling action can be taken. Fact devices for the control of transmission, filters so that the power quality can be improved, energy storage to ensure the reliability and handle the intermittency issues of the renewable energy integration. Now, let us come down with, once we have the idea of the enabling technologies, let us come down to the classification of the microgrid. There can be various kinds of classifications of the microgrids which are possible. I'm just going to focus on one kind of classification, that is the classification of microgrid based upon the type of interconnection. So based on type of interconnection, the microgrids can be classified as AC microgrid, DC microgrid, and hybrid microgrids. So if you talk about the AC microgrid, you have this AC bus. You can see this, I'm just trying to point out. This is the AC bus, and this is connected to main grid via breaker. So you have all the sources which are generating DC power, AC power, they can be connected directly. And all the sources which are generating DC power, such as photovoltaic panels, they have to be connected to this AC bus via DC to AC converters. Energy storage systems, this also produces DC, so it has also to be connected via DC to AC converter. The AC loads can be integrated directly. For connecting DC loads, again, you want an AC to DC converter. So you have various DC loads. If you see at your homes as well, out on something. If I go for DC microgrid, then also I'm missing out on something. And that is why not to have the best of the both the worlds. That is go for a microgrid, which is hybridization of AC and DC both. And that is a hybrid AC to DC microgrid. So this is from one of my papers in IT renewable power generation. I have been working on microgrids and on renewable energy integration largely, both the planning and controlling issues. So this is an ACMC-based hybrid AC LVDC microgrid. You can access this paper on IET, renewable power generation. So in hybrid AC-DC microgrid, you have the AC bus as well as you have the DC bus. So when you have the AC bus, the AC sources such as the wind turbine generators can be connected directly to AC bus. The DC sources such as the fuel cells or the PV sources or the energy storage, they can be connected directly to DC bus. The AC loads can be connected directly to AC bus. The DC sources can be connected directly to DC bus. And you have a bidirectional AC to DC main converter. As you can see over here, I'm just pointing out the cursor, which is being imparted, and you have a controller attached to it so that the deficit of power on the either side, on the AC side or on the DC side, can be done. If you have the deficit of power or surplus of power, the AC bus can supply to DC bus or DC bus to AC bus via this bidirectional AC to DC main converter. There is an automatic centralized microgrid controller which can control this converter, and accordingly, this bidirectional supply of power can be taken care of. So this is the hybrid AC DC microgrid. Now, what are the modes of operation of the microgrid? I have been asserting that the microgrids are connected to main grid at the point of common coupling. So, if you remain connected to the main grid at the point of common coupling, they operate in the grid connected mode. If the breaker is being opened, this microgrid can go in the islanded mode of operation. The challenges of operation in grid connected mode and islanded mode are entirely different. And that is why the controller should be such designed that it should allow the microgrid to operate in the grid connected mode, islanded mode, and the transition from these modes can also be allowed with the minimum of transit. So if I have the grid that's why what is our system can grid, because the surplus of microgrid that can fit it. So there is really no once we up in the islanded mode, there's no movement at this side. Because now you don't have any grid connected to it, this is already all by itself. So that is the match fitting relation that has to be taken care of at all times. Otherwise, voltage frenzy, so this bias islanded controlling. Now, this bias is the middle power. This is the power to source to control. But also it's not happening. I have various sort of injection power and that is the last one. The power to the source and this bias outflow is created, especially for the the power to the direction. So the laser and everything requires micro blocks in the direction of the so you have a structure which is connecting to grid and it is connecting to it will be so much function I want to take care of these cities which are connected look international. I will have machines which are very extreme machines and these machines you compare with we have no moving parts and no machine. So there is negative aspects not that all science the advantage aspect but it's also very easy. And if you talk about the system, already still you have integrated study measure this is the object of doing cost option plus all sort of items fine so you can handle all these factors here to take effect area on we have the first studies now the stuff so it is both feeling very obvious we have the device and what we have we have the minimum so we take one and one particulars synchronizing the main grid like operating and again with the main grid how this resynchronization will be handled that has to be taken care of with by the means of controller only. Power flow control between the microgrid and the main grid. This is an optimization problem, and the artificial intelligence can come into picture. I'm trying to reach out to all my computer science people out there. So, how much and what amount the power should flow from main grid to microgrid and vice versa, so that the energy management is optimum, as well as the economics of the planning is also achieved. That is being done by the power flow control. Optimizing the microgrid operating cost. Economics is one thing which rules in India. Proper handling of transient and restoration of desired conditions when you are switching between the two modes, so transport system. So the controller should be robust and adaptive so that they can respond well to transients. Availability of accurate measurement system, we have been asserting this. Unless we have the accurate measurement, I don't know what to control. And the controllers will also not be able to process the data accurately. Appropriate controlling action will not be taken. Efficient data acquisition system, we have already discussed the difference between the SCADA and wide area. If you don't have the appropriate system to acquire the data cannot be appropriately acquired, the data cannot be appropriately processed. High-speed computational facilities. So once I have the data at my end, I need high-speed computation which can take care of how the controller should take the action and what amount of controlling action is required. So this computational facility has to compute basically which and what all controller should be operating. Faster communication so that the commands can be appropriately communicated to the required controllers. So what are the control variables? In any power system, my electrical people will be able to relate with it. In any power system, there are four major quantities which are required to be controlled: the voltage, frequency, active power, and reactive power. So these are the control variables. So in grid connected mode, you have to go for the appropriate control. So you see the accommodation of active and reactive power generated by DER units and load demand. The reactive power management is to be done. And it can so happen that the host utility does not allow the regulation of control of voltage by DER units. Let us say that normally we integrate the solar PV generators at unity power factor. So the reactive power management can be allowed or may not be allowed based upon the requirements. In islanded mode, as we have already discussed, the voltage and frequency management itself is an issue, and that is why the critical load demand balance has to be maintained at all the times, and this is being taken care of by using the appropriate load sharing mechanism. Control hierarchy in microgrid. I will not elaborate on this much. Rather, I would discuss the basic controls which we have been using. So basically, if you talk about the controls, there are two kinds of control mechanisms which are prevalent: the centralized control and the decentralized control. I would assert upon this a bit so that this can give you a background of what we have been doing. So you see these are the generators. So individual generators. This is generator 1, generator 2, generator 3. And all the three generators have been feeding to this microgrid. You see that this is the microgrid. If you follow the cursor, which I have been asserting, there is a sensing technology over here. At all the times, the voltage and frequency at the microgrids has been sensed. This is being compared to the reference value. This has been compared to the reference value. Whatever voltage and frequency reference command I give, based upon that, the error signal is being processed. The error signal is being processed. And then there is the secondary control setting over here, which gives a generalized command to the controllers of the individual generators. So you see, there is the individual generators, the controllers of the individual generators cannot take any controlling action on their own. They have been guided by the secondary control that what controlling action they should be taking. So this is the centralized control where you have a boss sitting over here, and then this boss is instructing every controller individually based upon the conditions which are prevalent on this microgrid, that what appropriate controlling action has to be taken. So this is the centralized control where the control lies with a single entity, that is the secondary controller. If you compare this on the, all right, we will discuss the, I will come back to this later. You will first see what is the decentralized control, and then we will compare the features. If you see the decentralized control, you see that you have the individual generators, Each generator has a primary controller, and then each generator has the individually secondary control as well. In the centralized control, we had a common secondary controller, but here each generator has the primary control as well as a secondary control, and then they are being communicated via communication network. So each controller is being able to take the controlling action on its own, independent of what is happening with the other generator. So now, if you compare the centralized and decentralized control, data is gathered in a dedicated central controller, which performs required calculations. So you gather the data in a centralized controller. This determines the controlling actions for all units at a single point. As I told you, there is a boss, and this boss determines what the actions of each of the employees. This requires extensive communications between the central controller and the control units. So every generator will communicate to the centralized controller. Centralized controller will do the processing of the data, will determine the controlling action of each of the individual controller, and accordingly, each individual controller will take the controlling action. So that is centralized control. On the other hand, if you see the decentralized control, each unit has a separate local controller. Controller receives only the local information. One controller is not aware of the what other controller is doing. So if you compare now the centralized and decentralized control, with the centralized control, the computational cost is very high. You have to perform extensive computation because you are gathering data from each controller, each generator, and based upon that, the controlling action has to be issued to all the controllers simultaneously. And that is why the computational cost is extensive. This requires decentralized controller. On the other hand, they are low on computation. Communication facilities are required are very high in centralized controller. In decentralized controller, they are comparatively quite low. If you see the decentralized controller, because there is a master controller sitting over there, and that is why if you want to expand, the expansion becomes difficult because it becomes difficult to integrate in the existing infrastructure. Whereas if you see the decentralized, you every unit is an individual structure. So you bring up another generator with its own controller, and then you completely integrate it with the centralized control or with the decentralized control. You have no issues interconnecting it. Reliability, obviously, with a central controller, there's a single point of failure. So if the boss fails, the entire system fails. There would be no one to issue control. Whereas in decentralized controller, even if one unit fails, the other units can continue to function independently, and that is why this is much more reliable. Implementation difficulty, if you compare with centralized, implementation difficulty is very low because you just have a centralized infrastructure and which can be easily built up. Whereas if you compare the decentralized one, you need the individual controllers, and that is why the implementation difficulty is very high. So with this, now we have the background about what are the centralized and decentralized control. We have seen the smart grid, the microgrid, what all is to be required in the microgrid control. We have seen what is the requirement for the grid connected mode and for the islanded mode. We have seen the type of controllers can be centralized and decentralized. We have seen the comparison. With this now, let me put up and let me start concluding and let us see where we fit in the global scenario and what is the Indian scenario as of now, because this will give